Tony Child is my guest. He's going to be talking about power jumps. He's going to be talking about his two favorite topics, personal development and Jesus, and how they mesh together. This is going to be the kind of episode of the podcast that's really going to inspire you. If you need to be lifted up, if you need some inspiration, if you're trying to step into the identity of who you really are, tune in all the way through the end. You're going to get a lot of great stuff from Tony. Welcome to the Sales Strategies for Christian Coaches podcast. I'm Justin Janowski, your host. And I remember starting my first coaching business in 2012, getting one client and going out of business. In 2015, I tried again. I got 3 clients and I went out of business. In 2018, I launched again and I did $250,000 in revenue my first year. I've worked with now over 1,000 clients. We've done millions of dollars in sales. And what's incredible is God's provision through all of that. And also the reality that learning how to sell and market and build a real business as an entrepreneur made all the difference for me. And that's what this podcast is about. It's about giving you those skills, those strategies, those ideas that you can actually implement to build your business. And today, my guest is Tony Child. He's the CEO of Elevated Worldwide. They're doing some really cool things. Tony and I met years ago. He's a great Christian leader. He's an inspirational speaker. He's an incredible writer. You got to read his book. We'll have to talk about that in a little bit, Tony. And he is someone who is working for the kingdom of God. He's doing so much good work for Jesus in the marketplace. And I'm really excited for you to learn more from him. He's also going to be speaking at our conference, Christian Coaches Academy Live in the summer. You need to be there to meet him in person. He's probably going to line up right next to Tom Ziegler in the speaking order. We're going to have a fire afternoon on day 2 with Tony and Tom. Tony, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much. I speak a lot on stages and podcasts, and I'll tell you what, I was excited to be on this one. So this is going to be fun.
Amazing. Yeah, Tony gets paid $25,000 sometimes to speak on different stages, and here he is coming to speak at Christian Coaches Academy Live. He told me, man, if this is an opportunity to glorify Jesus and be around followers and like lift them up and help them build for the marketplace and for the kingdom, he wanted to be a part of it, and I was really honored by that. Tony, tell me more about and share with our listeners your journey as an entrepreneur and what you're doing now.
Yeah. So first of all, I was not always an entrepreneur. I thought you had to go to school to be an entrepreneur, and then you had to get an education, you had to have experience, and it was reserved for some people, but not for other people. And what I've realized in life is that that's not accurate. That's not true. And so I was a banker for 15 years. And while I was in my banking career, I had the opportunity to travel and to go to different workshops and seminars and bring back information, package it up, and then in essence sell it to the bank or to my employees and get them to buy in to the content that I was creating and bringing to them. And so there was one conference that I went to out of Harvard. It was based off the book called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker. And the first thing that the instructor said when she got up there was, when you change how you see things, the things you see will change. Now, I later figured out that that was a quote from Wayne Dyer, Dr. Wayne Dyer. But I then turned to my boss who was sitting next to me and I said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Can I please leave? And she said, if you want to be fired, you'll leave. I said, fine, I'll stay. And I was super close, Justin. I had my arms folded. I was like, this is complete horse crap. I can't believe I'm here. And within 20 minutes, I was kind of leaning in. Within 30 minutes, my hands were unfolded. And within 2 hours, I was like all the way in, like I was eating it up. And I've since found that if you change how you see things, the world you see will change. And there's a lot of us that want big change. There's a lot of us that feel big change. For me, I felt it. Every day I'd walk into the bank and I'd have this part in my chest that said, Tony, you are made for more and you are selling yourself short. But I didn't know what more was, Justin. I didn't know what I was created for. I think a lot of your listeners, a lot of the people maybe watching or listening to this, they probably feel the same thing. They're walking into a job or a career every day. They feel that thing in their chest that says, you're not supposed to be here. You've got greatness locked up inside of you, but they don't know how to access it.
Yeah.
And that's what I felt, is that I knew I was made for more, but I couldn't access more. And so I made it a point to really go in and access that, and hired some of the best in the world to teach me. I went to John Maxwell down in Orlando, Florida. Mark Cole, who does everything John Maxwell is CEO, he mentored me for several years. I met Bob Proctor and globetrotted the world with him. He was my mentor for about 8 years. He linked arms with me and taught me all that I know. about speaking and presenting and coaching and teaching. And same with John. I love both of those and how they interact with people. And so here we are 10 years later, having left the bank 10 years ago. And I have the opportunity today of coaching professional athletes. I coach NFL athletes when they're leaving their career. I coach Olympians. I coach founders of companies. The founder of UGG Boots, I coached for a little bit. So just different people I've had the privilege of connecting with and coaching. And now I've developed a process that if you follow the process, you can get drastic change in your life. So
Yeah.
that's a little bit about me, where I've come from, and where I'm at today.
Amazing. I've only known you as an entrepreneur, speaker, coach. It's
Yeah.
almost hard for me to imagine you ever did anything else. I'm glad that you shared that because so many of our listeners, so many coaches and entrepreneurs have had careers first where they worked in a normal 9 to 5 kind of job. And they at some point decided or felt called to this kind of work. For the person who's listening, who is either thinking about or has just left their job to become an entrepreneur, what would you tell them about the journey ahead?
Um, if somebody tells you it's easy, they're lying. Like, run. It's hard. And the reason why is for 30 years of my life, 35 years of my life, I thought this was the way my life would go. I would go to elementary school to not get kicked out, to go to junior high school, to get good grades for high school, to get good grades for college, to get to college, to get a degree, to get that degree, to go to a career, to move up in that career and get certifications, get education, get experience, and job, pop between different banks, and then eventually become a CEO one day, make $500,000 and retire, and then golf and die. Like, that's literally what I thought my life would be. And I think that's the pattern that a lot of people feel like their life will be, is I got to just get good grades to go to college, to get the degree, to get the good job, to make the income, to be able to retire one day, to be able to die. And so I knew that there was something more deeper inside of me, though, than that story. But I was unaware that I was unaware. So the first thing I'm going to tell people is that if that's been the story, the ability to just think beyond that story is hard.
Mm,
It's hard for a lot of people to think like, can I do anything else other than what I've been doing for the last 15 years of my life? I mean, guys, I worked out my way in the banking world where I was making really good money.
mhm,
Well, I also upped my expenses to where I was spending a lot. And when you get 15 years in a career and you're sitting there thinking like, could I really jump? Could I really do something different? Immediately, I started connecting my know-how with my ability. Those were connected together. And what I found is that I don't know how to do it, but I need to know that I can.
mm,
And a lot of people, they connect that. And when they don't know that they can, they connect it with their know how. And immediately people will say, I don't know how, therefore I can't. And here's what I know that it says in the Bible, all things are possible to him that believeth, but the opposite is also true. Nothing is possible for him that don't believeth.
mm, mhm,
Okay, so we got to go to the opposite of that. Everything is possible to him that believeth, but nothing is possible for him that don't believeth. And so I just want you to think about, like, when I get into a know-how and I don't know how to do something, do I believe I can't? I
mm,
can't is an unbelief.
mm,
When it said that Jesus couldn't do mighty work in some of the cities because of the people's unbelief.
mhm,
This idea of I can't, or we can't, or you can't, or this can't happen, or that can't happen. And a lot of people, they connect their know-how with their ability. And
mm,
here's what I know now, 10 years later, even though I didn't know how to leave the bank, I had all the potential and capacity to do it.
mm,
And so if you have a listener, if you're listening right now, but Tony, I don't know how to leave. I don't know how to leave this job. I don't know how to leave this thing. I don't know how to do it. I would just say, well, if you did, it'd be done.
mm,
And so part of the fun is figuring out, how do I leave? How do I do this? How do I build this? But you got to believe you can. I know I can. I don't know how, but I know I can.
mm,
And that's where all the high achievers, that's where all the entrepreneurs live, is, okay, I got this. I can do this. I don't know how to do it, but I'm willing to take a step into the dark.
mm,
You're going to have to take a lot of steps into the dark, a lot of the unknowns. And those are kind of scary and they're hard. And you'll have a lot of resistance. You'll have a lot of resistance from people that will tell you, no, you can't. What are you thinking? I mean, I had people, Justin, I'm not exaggerating. I had people in the bank that swore to me when I told them I was leaving. that they would make sure I never came back. They would make it their life mission to where I never got bad into banking, that I could never come back. And that even made my resolve even more like, watch me, I'm going to show you now. But that would scare a lot of people to say, well, that I'm not leaving because I don't have my zip cord. I don't have my net, my safety net that I can go back on. And so we could talk a lot about this, but it's increasing your level of belief. And we
Yeah.
can put a lot of principles in Jesus in here too.
That's right. Wow. So good. You know, it's interesting. I had some conversations like that when I started my coaching business as well. A couple of very intense conversations with very intense words of people wanting to cast their unbelief on me and what was possible or wasn't possible for me as an entrepreneur and a coach. And sometimes we just have to believe, and you mentioned before that knowingness that there's a greater greatness inside of us, and we just don't have access to it yet. And that language, when you said it before, really resonated with me. The idea that, and I think a lot of people feel this way. There's this recognition that I'm made for something greater. I've got greatness inside of me. I just don't know how to access it yet. And I know you're going to be talking a lot about this at the conference. By the way, if you're listening to this and you're like, man, I'm getting fired up already. Every time I talk to Tony, I want to run through a brick wall. He's that kind of guy. And it's just naturally who he is. Come join us at the conference. Go to www.f2itribe.com/CCA Live 2026. We'll put that in the show notes. That's F, the number 2, the letter I, tribe.com/CCA Live 2026. I want you at the conference with us. It's in July. It's going to be amazing. Tom Ziegler's speaking. Tony Child is speaking. We've got great speakers on sales and marketing and branding. It's going to be an amazing event with around 100 Christian coaches and entrepreneurs there. And we would love for you to be there with us. And a preview of that, Tony. How do we begin to access the greatness inside of us that's been elusive so far?
Yeah. So here's the greatest quote, and I'm going to talk deeply about this at CCA Live. So I don't want to, take the air out of the balloon quite yet, but I'm going to give you a little teaser. The greatest quote in science that I've ever heard, and I'm going to change it to Christianity. But the greatest quote that I've ever heard is this. It was by Albert Einstein. He said, the greatest decision you'll ever make in your lifetime is whether you believe you live in a hostile or a friendly universe. Now, I changed it, and this hopefully will resonate with your audience. The greatest decision you'll ever make in your lifetime is whether you worship a hostile or a friendly God. And see, for my whole life, I worshiped a hostile God, that I was to be here to be tried and tested, and my faith would be tested, and I worshiped a hostile God, that I had to be obedient to all these commandments and all of these things, and if I didn't, then I was going to go to hell, not heaven. And so I believed in a very hostile God, that I better get my crap together or I'm not going to make it. And I shifted my lens, and I believe in a friendly God that only wants to increase me and only wants to bless me. And anytime I have a decreasing thought, anytime I have a self-deprecating thought, it is not of God.
Hmm.
Now, if it's not of God, you know where it comes from.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm telling you this right now, that anytime you have a thought that decreases you, you're not enough. There's not enough. You're not talented enough, not smart enough, not courageous enough, not enough. Or there's not enough. There's not enough time. There's not enough money. There's not enough sales. That thought of not enoughness does not come from God.
Hmm.
And I know that because Jesus gave some cool parables. He gave some cool stories. And one of the stories that he gave was the parable of the talents. Now, parables were just stories. They weren't real, but they taught principles. And if you could learn the principle in the parable, it was amazing what you could get out of it. So the parable of the talents was actually a parable about money. Now, a lot of people are like, no, it's about abilities, and you got to share your abilities. And if you hide your abilities, then you're going to get them taken away. And that's true to a certain extent. But don't get us wrong. Like, a talent was a large sum of money. And he had two servants that got 5 and 2 talents, two like massive amounts of money, and they were to go out and do something with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they went out and traded it and lost it and built businesses and lost businesses and brought back double what they were given. And they were called good and faithful. Well, the one that had one talent, one bag of gold, hid it, buried it in the earth, didn't do anything with it. And when the master came back, took it and gave it to the person that had 10, and called this servant a wicked and slothful servant. Now, slothful is apathetic, lazy. And here's what I now know. The words that servant told the master tells me all I need to know about the quote I just shared with you. He looked at the master and he said, I feared thee, that thou art a hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown.
Hmm.
He looked at this man and he said, I was afraid of you. I was afraid that you were going to strike me. I was afraid that if I lost this, that you would be really upset with me. So I hid it so that I didn't lose it. And that mentality of being afraid of God is what gets you lost. And for me, it's how do I see God? If I see God through a friendly universe, then I know that he's always enough. In fact, let me ask you this, Justin.
Yeah.
If we say a talent was a bag of gold, how many bags of gold does God have?
Hmm. More than we can imagine. Unlimited
Infinite,
amount. Yeah.
infinite amount. So if I know that, see, the reason why the person with one bag was so afraid is because he saw God in a finite way. That if I take this one bag, that's one bag you now lost. Well, it's me looking at God through a friendly universe and saying, no, I got as many shots as I can get. And if I lost it all and I went back to the master and I said, hey, I tried this business and I tried this thing and I tried that thing and it didn't work. Can I have more? Well, the master has an unlimited amount. Of course, he's going to give me more.
Hmm.
But I can't have the mentality that he's going to be angry if I lost it. And so we're going to talk deeply about this at CCA, because this is the heart of the matter of coaches that have this great desire to build and I want to help people, but they're afraid. They're afraid of loss. They're afraid of image. They're afraid of, well, I've been given this much by God, and what would I do if I lost it? I've got to be a good steward over it. I got to be responsible for it. It's like, no, you got to be a good channel for it. You got to
Yeah.
be willing to let it come to you, through you, and to whoever it needs to go to. And so we're going to talk deeply about that. But when you ask the question, what can people do? The first thing I would have you do is, what universe do you believe in? Because that's the first assessment you got to take. If you believe in a hostile universe, there's no amount of coaching, no amount of teaching, no amount of meditation, no amount of breath work, no amount of medicines that will get that out of you.
Hmm.
And so that's the first thing that I do with people is I shift them out of this hostile like lens of God and the universe and get them into a friendly lens and universe. So the first thing I'd ask for people to do as they come is like, man, I'm in a hostile universe and I want to get out of it.
Yeah, it's so good. We can see the exact same two people can see the exact same events unfolding and assign completely different meaning to them. And the meaning we assign to our experiences oftentimes shapes our entire life and what we do next. And one of the things that you're referencing is it's normal as an entrepreneur to have some fear. It's normal to have some uncertainty, and our calling is to do it scared. And when we do it scared and we get the repetitions and we keep doing it and we keep doing it and we keep doing it, it gets easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's fascinating if you look at fear. I've been studying for the last 3 weeks Moses and the children of Israel. And the children of Israel, when they left having been slaves for generations, and now they're on their own and they're wandering in the wilderness 40 years, God gave them everything they needed every day. But here's the question I'd ask you, Justin. Why did it expire every night?
Hmm.
They couldn't save up their manna. They had to utilize it that day, and then at night it would spoil. And then the next morning they'd have to wait for it to come again, and then it would come again, and they'd eat it and they'd utilize it. And then that night it would spoil. And then when the Sabbath would come, they could get 2 portions so that they could not work on the Sabbath. But the question is why? So I'm curious, and I'll share with you my thoughts because it centers
Yeah.
around fear. And I want to talk about fear here. Why did they that expire every night? What are your thoughts?
My initial thought is that God wants us to trust him every single day anew and to not know for sure what's going to happen next and to just trust him and surrender to him with everything.
Yeah. And fear is caused by going into an uncertain future and imagining the worst in that future. That's where fear comes from. Fear is not here. I'm not afraid here. I'm afraid of some illusionary future that I create in here that then becomes real because I believe it and I see it in here.
Yeah.
And therefore, it creates all these feelings of fear within me. And I believe what God's saying is
Mhm.
stop it.
Mhm.
Stop thinking of tomorrow. Stop going into the future and wondering if you're going to have food tomorrow. Knock it off. Stop it. Come here today. I've got you today. I'll have you tomorrow. But you keep going into the future and you keep saving today because you're afraid I'm not going to give it to you tomorrow. So
Mhm.
stop it. Trust me. I
Mhm.
got you today and I'll have you tomorrow and I'll have you in 20 years and I'll have you in 40 years. I've got you.
Mhm.
And where fear comes from is this idea that God doesn't got me. That's where fear comes from. I go into the future and I imagine a worst case scenario and then I believe that God can't solve that in the future. And I'm creating it today.
Mhm.
So when you say it's like we got to lean into the things we're afraid of and we got to do those things, I would say lean into the things that are uncertain
Mhm.
and do them in faith and belief. Okay. God's got me.
Amen.
God's got
Amen.
me. I'm going to try it.
I love that. There's two more things I want to ask you about before we wrap up today. One is you wrote this beautiful little book called Power Jumps. I just read it, fired me up. I mean, it was incredible. I don't know if it's available to the public right now. Can people
It's
get
not
it?
right now. We're going to make it available. It's a part
All
of
right.
one of our programs that we run called
Yeah.
Jumpstart. But yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to print it, get an
Okay.
ISBN on it. We're going to get it out there.
We'll have to talk about this later, but curious if that could be done before the conference. We could be handing out
Yes.
to people there. All
Yeah.
right. All right. Come to the conference. You get power jumps. This book, quietly available to close friends, was so empowering for me. I read it with my wife and we just loved it. We just sat in awe and paused, and it caused us to think and have great conversations. Can you tell us what is a power jump and how can we pursue that?
Yeah. So a power jump, I would equate it to a quantum leap. Okay. So in quantum physics, when an article goes from one plane of existence to another plane that is several planes higher in one shot, that's called a quantum leap. And in life, I call those power jumps. So when I'm here and I want to go here, and I think there's all these imaginary steps in between here and here, why can't I just go straight to here? Why do I have to go through all these steps? So an example of this is when I was leaving, first of all, in the bank, I didn't realize I was living power jumps, but I was living it because I knew that there were jobs that I wanted to have, but I didn't have the right education or I didn't have the right experience. And most people, when they look at a job application and it says must have 10 years experience, must have a degree in this, must have a bachelor's in that, must have this certification, immediately we say, well, I don't have those things. So therefore, I'm not even going to try. And a bunch of times I would get jobs that I was not qualified for, but I would get tapped on the shoulder and say, hey, will you apply for this? And I'd apply and I'd get the job. Didn't have a degree, didn't have the years of experience, didn't have the certifications, and I would get these jobs. And I was hiring people that had way more education and experience than I had, and I was their boss. And so a power jump, in essence, it's exponential thinking. So when I'm here and I want to go here, I'm a teller and I want to be a manager. I think, well, I got to have this year's experience and then I got to get this degree and then I got to get to this job. And then from this job, I got to jump over to this job and then I got to get this job. And then eventually I'll be a manager, maybe 8 years from now. And I'm going to ask you, why can't you be a manager today? Why? Why? And so when I was leaving the bank, I'm going to give you an example of this. When I was leaving the bank, I was making 125,000 a year and I had $125,000 worth of expenses every year. And then my wife was a teacher as well, and so she made money, but we had a lot of expense. And so as I was leaving, I knew that I had to provide for my family. And so I was calling speaking jobs. And one of the places I called that accepted and interviewed me was Covey. It was the Covey organization. And I got through all the way to the end and they offered me an entry level job. And it was an entry level job where I would help people, prepare for their events. And I asked the guy, I said, well, why can't I just be a speaker? He says, oh no, Tony, that you have to work yourself up to that. You got to go through this channel, and then you got to have this job, and then you got to have that job, and then we'll move you here. And so maybe in 5 years we'll work to that. But we got to start you at half your salary, and we got to start you down here, and you can work your way up the ladder. I went home that night. I prayed about it. I sat down and I said, God, is that real? And he said, no, go start a company and start speaking today. And so I started my company and started speaking, and I was making more than those Covey speakers in a matter of 6 months. And I made a quantum leap. I made a power jump,
Hmm.
a power jump where I moved from one plane to another plane and did it immediately. I worked exponentially instead of by multiplication or addition.
Hmm.
And so you can do that in your life. You can make power jumps where you move from wherever you are to wherever you want to go. You can do it right now, right
Hmm.
now.
So cool. This resonates deeply with me because I share this at the beginning of every episode, but I remember like launching my first coaching business and having the one paying client. I had two clients, Tony. One of them paid. And I made a few $100s in that first coaching business, and I was out of business. It was like quiet quitting before that was cool. I didn't even, I just went back to my main job. The side hustle was over. And then my second attempt 3 years later, I did a little bit better. I had a little incremental growth. I went from one paying client to three paying clients, and I was earning a little over $1,000 a month. And 3 years later, when I tried again, I set my sights on a really big goal. $5,000 a month I wanted to earn. I wanted to go from a few $100s to a few $1,000s to earning $60,000 that first year. And God had different plans. And I went from a goal of 60,000 to collecting 250 grand that first year as a coach. And it was this power jump, this quantum leap, and it defied what I thought was possible. So I wasn't playing out all the psychology of what you're going to teach us at the conference, but there were things, and I read your book and I was like, oh yeah, that was there. That was there. That was there. And there is an equation to this. And more of that was playing out for me than I realized. And now I can see it when I'm looking back. And man, that was like the first time in my life I'd ever experienced anything like that quantum jump, that real power jump. And I'm excited for you to unlock the equation of that a little bit more for our audience at the conference. Thank you for sharing with us today. This is a sales podcast. Before we wrap, can I put you on the spot for one sales tip? One sales quote, one sales idea that you think can help entrepreneurs and coaches who are listening?
Yeah, the number one sales objection is always going to be money. And so I just want you to understand that the first time you drop an offer, the vast majority of the time, it will shock people and they'll be like, nope, nope, I don't have it. And what that is it's a sign. It's a sign that has said that I haven't got you to the point where you desire whatever it is that you're selling more than your money. And so what I would share is like, as a salesperson, people's money paradigms are really thick. And my job is to help them come out of their money paradigm and into this new identity and to call them forward. I'm super grateful for the man that changed my life when I thought $15,000 to go up to Toronto, Canada was like there was no way. And I had somebody that helped me see my own money paradigms and taught me that this desired life that I had a price. And was I willing to pay it? And got me to emotionalize more over my future than the amount of money I was going to have to pay. Just realizing that money it's the number one objection. And if it's a no, it's not that they don't have the money. It's that their desire is not high enough.
And one of the things I've loved about witnessing your work is the way that you're able to call people into stepping into the identity of who they really are. And it's like this remembering of the greatness that's inside of them, this remembering of who God created them to be. And when they step into that highest, truest self, then a lot of those objections go away. I'm excited to learn more from you. I'm excited for others to learn more from you as well. If you haven't signed up yet, f2itribe.com/CCA Live 2026. Come and join us at the conference, meet Tony in person, and get more time learning about how to have your next power jump. Thank you, Tony. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you.